Hey guys, it's Sad Crow Man. Remember when I told you I was emotionally drained and my next video would be about something lighthearted like Electra Heart? Well, no you didn't. Today we are talking about Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Like many of you, I've been watching this case for years, and I saw public opinion shift drastically between extremes. First, Amber was innocent and Johnny was a monster. Then it was the other way around after Amber failed to Kevin Spacey her way out of it, basically. And for the most part, it stayed that way, save for some who argue that they abused each other and therefore there is no victim in this case. Their marriage counselor said that their dynamic was mutually abusive, and I'll go into why I think she is mistaken. Now, a lot of YouTubers are trying to appear neutral because they think it'll make them look more unbiased and professional, I guess, but I'm only capable of calling them like I see them, so I'll just admit straight up front. I am 100% Team Johnny, and I always have been. And my opinion? Mutual abuse my ass. This is an embarrassingly unprofessional argument that makes no sense medically, and I just don't have respect for it. I mean, if it's coming from a random person, I see where they might draw that conclusion. But from a professional psychologist, it's just super embarrassing, and I'm gonna explain why. But first, why did this argument get so popular, and what's wrong with this argument to begin with? I first saw this proposed in my comments section like years ago on a vlog I made where I just casually talked about my feelings on the case. I believe it was called I Never Believed Amber Heard. I'm glad she's been exposed for abusing Johnny Depp. The video is now outdated, by the way, not worth watching at all, but I do still stand by that mouthful of a title. Suck it, Amber Bots. Anyway, this this seems to have been born out of a logical fallacy called middle ground fallacy. I've also heard it called the middle road fallacy. This fallacy is widespread because people see compromise as a good thing, right? So why not compromise between two extremes? The problem with this is the two arguments are settled not through reasoning, but by assuming the truth must be somewhere in the middle, and indisputable facts are often disregarded to accomplish this compromise. In this case, the two options are Johnny is lying and abused Amber, or Amber is lying and abused Johnny. People combined these two options into Amber abused Johnny, but Amber is telling the truth because Johnny was also abusing Amber. So part of this may be explained by cognitive dissonance, because those who canceled Johnny in the early days don't have to feel guilty about it if they can at least claim, hey, they're mutually abusive, so I wasn't wrong, and I don't have to feel bad about jumping on the hate train against an innocent man. This used to be more of a fringe opinion, however, it seems in recent years well, now it's basically all that Amber's whole case is hinging on. She can't prove her innocence. As a matter of fact, she just got exposed in a huge lie over a makeup palette of all things, and her legal team is so embarrassingly terrible. Her lawyer actually objected to his own question. It just baffles me how incompetent her legal team is. But anyway, yeah, so basically, her only hope is to argue he was abusing me back and he was on drugs, so I did nothing wrong. We're just both toxic. So I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of the people agreeing with her are bots. But I know there are some of you who are clinging to this conviction still that they are both guilty on some level. So allow me to explain something called reactive abuse. One abusive moment, that won't change you much as a person, but enduring a long period of being repeatedly abused, over and over again, be it verbally or physically or both, it will change you. Resentment will build, stress will build, and the victim will, from time to time, snap. This is a stress response. When put in a threatening situation or in a situation that is perceived to be threatening, the victim's body releases stress hormones that will help them determine how to react. A fight or flight response, in other words. Now, a flight response may manifest in the victim, say, hiding in the bathroom, asking the abuser to please leave them alone and trying to get away, getting in their car and driving off, etc., etc. It seems to me that flight responses are more common, but sometimes victims also have a fight response, depending on the situation. They may fight back against their abuser, be it physically or just verbally, and that does not make them any less of a victim. The victim may lash out in the heat of the moment while they're being abused, or they may have a more delayed reaction. But either way, you may notice changes in the victim. A once friendly person may become aggressive and snap at others, or they may isolate themselves and avoid people who just want to help. And none of that makes them a bad person. That's just a trauma response. Meanwhile, the abuser will use these unconscious behaviors to their advantage. The narcissist especially will go out of their way to appear calm and friendly to everybody else, and then proceed to use this against the victim. So to the victim's friends and family, the narcissist may say, "I'm so worried about the victim. They've been acting so strange lately. I just want to help. I love them so much. I don't understand why they're pushing me away. If they ever come to you with some crazy story like that I've been beating them, please let me know so we can get them the help they deserve, crazy stuff like that." But then behind closed doors, it'll be, "Nobody will believe you because of how you act. You're a useless alcoholic and nobody cares about you. You're not better than me. You hit me back. And if you do it again, they'll find your body at the bottom of the river." Those are just examples, of course. It'll vary from situation to situation. But what you need to take away from this is that the abuser in the relationship will take this reactive abuse and use it to their advantage to paint a narrative while the victim is busy just trying to survive. As for the notion of mutual abuse, I argue it doesn't exist. This is because in an abusive relationship, they cannot be equals because the abuser is going to have power over the abused. Abusers do not seek out other abusers to be their equal. Ever. They seek out vulnerable people that they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse. No narcissistic abuser says, I think I'm going to find someone who will tear down my already fragile ego and beat me. No. No, there's a reason we see this same abuser-victim dynamics play out over and over again, i.e. narcissist and codependent. And that is because real life isn't like some inaccurate BDSM smut fic. In an abusive relationship, even if it gets physically violent between the two of them, you're going to find that one partner is the aggressor and the other is the victim. So the narcissist is going to seek out someone who will give them something called narcissistic supply, which is a noun referring to the excessive and constant delivery of admiration and attention. Thus, they're not looking for a healthy partner or another partner like them who's only into themselves. You will never see two narcissists together because a narcissist will not give another narcissist narcissistic supply. They're each too busy being into themselves to give narcissistic supply to another narcissist, making it effectively impossible for them to target each other mutually. Plus, they're going to know each what the other is up to. Thus, the narcissist will seek out someone who will stroke their ego excessively, in other words, a codependent. So this whole Amber and Johnny are both narcissists who are abusing each other equally narrative, it's just pathologically improbable. It's not technically impossible, but it's possible in the same way that it's technically possible for Tyra Banks to become president of the United States. I mean, it could happen. It doesn't necessarily go against the laws of the universe, but it will not happen under organic circumstances, and there is no point in theorizing that it has happened. It's just kind of nonsensical. Okay, you may say, so they can't both be narcissists, but what is the difference between abuse and reactive abuse? Isn't hitting someone wrong no matter what, you may ask? Not exactly. See, the key difference is that one partner is lashing out because they're trying to protect themselves, and the other is attacking to exert control over their target. The latter person is the aggressor, while the former is acting in self-defense, and likely not even consciously. I don't mean that in the sense that the victim isn't aware, just that they are reacting out of instinct. Now, ultimately, it is the abuser pulling the strings, dragging the victim down to their level. This could be to fill their need for drama, to bait the victim into doing something that they can use against them later, or just for the sake of making them suffer. Personally, I'm a firm believer that the way you act when you are reacting to a traumatic experience is not the real you. However, a narcissist will never admit fault. The abuser will do everything in their power to convince the victim that it is not I, but you who are the abusive one. You're the bad one. They'll convince the victim that they can't do anything right and the worst things they've done, that's all there is to them. That the reactive abuse is only showing their true nature. So basically, what I'm saying here, what I'm getting at, is that this brainwashing may explain why their marriage counselor was so convinced that they were mutually abusive. Perhaps, and I'm just theorizing here, by the way. Perhaps Johnny, being more vulnerable at the time, believed Amber's characterization of him and thus did not dispute that he was abusive during the counseling. And to be fair, if that's the case, the counselor did have more to say about Amber being the aggressor than she did about Johnny, which could explain all this, how a professional could draw the widely ridiculed belief that they have an equal dynamic and yet an abusive dynamic at the same time, when that makes no sense because one kind of precludes the other. You can't abuse your equal because you have to have power to be an abuser. It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, maybe the marriage counselor was just an idiot. I don't know. Of course, then again, por qué no los dos, a lot of professionals are very upset with what she said because, like I said, makes no sense and it spreads misinformation about domestic violence. Anyway, so do I think Johnny is violent by nature? No, absolutely not. I do not think Johnny is a violent person now just because he got physical with Amber. I think he reacted to someone who is a violent person and who was threatening him and dragged him down to her level. And it's very sad. And I hate having to say this all the time, but for like the 80th time, no, I don't think it matters that he's a man and Amber is a woman. I don't give a what's in her pants. She put him through severe psychological trauma that he's going to carry with him potentially for the rest of his life, and she damaged his reputation and his career, and it's very upsetting. I don't see why sex has to be such an issue. I assure you, male domestic violence victims do exist. But how can you tell Amber is the abuser, whereas Johnny is the reactor? So surely I don't actually have to answer this question. I do, for the people who aren't following the trial. Fair enough, okay. So there are two main reasons why no one supports Amber for those who aren't in the loop. So one is their demeanors and history. So Amber was previously accused of domestic violence before her relationship with Johnny. However, no one has ever said Johnny was violent. In fact, his previous partners said the exact opposite of him. And this was at great personal risk to them, need I remind you. At the time, everyone was siding with Amber quite blindly, and Johnny was hashtag cancelled and losing roles, etc., etc. So his ex-partners had nothing to gain by defending him. And of course, there are mutual friends testifying on Johnny's behalf. Meanwhile, Amber's own parents sided with Johnny. Also, Amber has displayed angry outbursts, childish behavior, petty mind games, and tall tales. Meanwhile, Johnny has been calmer and more mature. That said, people are finding it a lot harder to side with Amber. Pro tip, if you want people to take your side, don't act like an immature dumbass. So, number 2 is the lack of evidence to support Amber's claims. So, to summarize the trial so far, Amber Heard has an untouched makeup palette and Johnny's substance abuse history. So, what's the deal with the palette? You've probably seen it in thumbnails or news articles, even if you're not familiar with the case. So, since Amber's in the public eye, people are always asking her, hey, if Johnny was abusing you, then why were you never seen with bruises like, ever? Not until the 11th hour? So Amber tried to fix this by claiming that she had been covering up all of her bruises all along with a color correction palette. Now, the story's already kind of fishy because if she has the skill to cover up bruises over the years, then she also has the makeup skills required to create fake bruises. It's not a hard thing to do. You can do it with blush, but anyway, she made the huge mistake of submitting an actual palette into evidence. Now, this palette, she claimed that she kept it in her purse for years to cover her bruises, always carrying it with her. A lot of exposition. However, not only did she not even have a gently used palette in her possession, not that I've seen anyway, but said palette was not even in production until after their divorce. So she covered up her imaginary bruises with her imaginary palette from the future. Good to know. So needless to say, this was very widely mocked and ridiculed. It's kind of hard not to laugh at it, even though this case is pretty grim. As far as substance abuse goes, being an alcoholic doesn't automatically make you abusive, and there's audio evidence of her encouraging his drug use, presumably to make him easier to control. She's just trying to take advantage of ableist and sexist stereotypes to win the case. Meanwhile, Johnny Depp has loads of evidence without having to manipulate people. He has security camera footage, audio, etc., blah blah blah. And of course, Amber actually admitted to abusing him. She actually confessed to abusing him under oath, so There's that. But don't tell the Amber bots that, they'll get mad. So anyway, I go into more detail, but by the time this video goes public, the case will likely have already progressed. So yeah, if they are mutually abusive, then why is it that there is so much evidence against Amber compared to Johnny? If they are mutually abusive, why did one of them look like a succubus who was constantly draining the life out of the other? If they're mutually abusive, why did a man who was so docile for 50 years suddenly lash out against his partner? It's all easily explained by reactive abuse. You see, sometimes you don't have to think that hard about a case. Sometimes the answer's obvious, and that's why I supported Johnny from the beginning. It's not just because he's my favorite actor of all time. He is, no point me hiding that, but it's just his innocence is kind of obvious. There were red flags from the very beginning. And I've got to be real with you, man. If you only support survivors of abuse when they're perfect angels who have never done anything wrong, you are not a real ally. Because domestic violence survivors do not go through all the torment, the fear, the rage, and come out of it sparkling clean. There's baggage, there's psychological damage, there's changes in personality and temperament. I should know, I've been there, and I wish Johnny the best of luck as the trial proceeds. This video is sponsored by me. On my new side channel where I'm preparing to post the audiobook, I try out one of Iretti's makeup looks, so if you want to help make the audiobook a reality, please consider subscribing to Cry for the Devil audiobook and watching one of the videos to help me meet monetization requirements. I really want to make this free for everybody to enjoy and not put it behind a paywall. If you do want early access to my videos, though, or behind-the-scenes content, Discord membership, etc., consider supporting me on Patreon and you'll have your name up here too. That's it. Please rate, subscribe, and blessed be, motherfuckers.